During FBI agent Peter Strzok's testimony and also GOP hearings, he had an interaction with Louie Gohmert that I found interesting. And so Gohmert really wants to hit Strzok hard because he believes that Strzok has enough of a bias to play a role in this alleged witch hunt of an investigation into Trump and possible ties to Russian meddling. Now, with that said, take a look at what Gohmert says to Strzok at the beginning of this interaction.
And let me tell you, when you have text messages, Mr. Strzok, the way you do, saying the things you did, you'd been better off coming in here and say, look, that was my bias. And you kind of get around to that a little bit when you say, hey, everybody's got political views. Those are called biases, and we all have them. And you have come in here and said, I had no bias. And you do it with a straight face. And I watched you in the private testimony you gave. And I told some of the other guys, he is really good. He's lying. He knows, we know he's lying, and he could probably pass a polygraph.
Well, if you pass a polygraph, that means he's not lying. I mean, you could believe or not believe in polygraphs, but if you believe in one and if you pass one, that means you're not lying. Anyway, so no, there is a difference between views and bias. Everybody has political views, but if it affects your conduct of your official role, then that becomes a bias. So, for example, I'm not a big fan of Hillary Clinton, but if I was doing an investigation of Hillary Clinton, I would not let that affect me and bias me. I would try to stick to the facts, whether it was as a prosecutor or in whatever role it might be. I would hope that FBI officials would do the same thing, and it appears they have, because he clearly, Strzok, did not like Trump, really disliked Trump. And he had incredibly incriminating information about how he might have been working with the Russians during the campaign. And he didn't release it during the campaign, thereby helping Trump tremendously.
Yeah, let me just
see, that's his political views, not leading to bias.
Look, let me just remind everyone that leading up to the election, the FBI made it very clear that there was one person being investigated. It was a public announcement that this person was being investigated, and that person was Hillary Clinton. Comey reopened the investigation. He decided to go against his superiors and call a press conference where he announced the reopening of the investigation, and it was a public spectacle, right? On the other hand, there was reason to believe, because people like George Papadopoulos were talking to all sorts of people claiming that he had been in touch with Russians. Because of those interactions, there was reason to believe that the Russians were involved in Trump's campaign. And so the FBI implanted an informant to see what was going on. None of us knew about that until recently, because the FBI didn't announce that. There was no press conference about it. It was all top secret. So leading up to the election, the person who had the upper hand, even though he was also facing an investigation, was Donald Trump. So it's just fascinating to see members of the GOP keep making this point about how all this unfair stuff was going on, and how can this FBI person be against Trump? How is he part of the FBI? What a terrible bias. It's all political theater, it's all BS.
Okay, look, Democrats are so weak. You know that Obama selected James Comey. James Comey's a lifelong Republican, or was until Trump fired him, and worked under John Ashcroft as his number 2. For his whole life, he's been a Republican, but Obama brought him in and said, no, that's okay, he won't be biased. Most of the FBI officials are Republicans. No, that's okay, they won't be biased. And what did they do? They actually smeared Hillary Clinton. And you can say, hey, it was a legitimate investigation, but it was not legitimate to say right before the election, we're reopening the investigation, right? And even though they knew that they had excellent evidence that Trump's campaign was working with the Russians, they wouldn't say it. So they were biased against Hillary Clinton. I got no love for Hillary Clinton, but that's what actually happened. And what does Trump and the Republicans do? They flip it. No, even though all evidence points to you being biased against my opponent, I will claim that you were biased against me. Meanwhile, the Democrats, nothing, okay? And to be fair, the Democrats, they don't want to rip the FBI to shreds. They don't want to destroy their credibility. They actually believe in our system of government. But there is a guy who's being investigated who's a lifelong criminal and doesn't believe in our system of government and would like to, of course, shred the people that are investigating him. He'd like to take down the cops who are on the beat. and that's Donald Trump trying to take down the FBI who's investigating him today.
All right, more from Gohmert.
A member of this committee just asserted that this witness, who is under oath and a former agent of the FBI, lied. There is no evidence that. I ask him to withdraw it.
I do not withdraw it. He is not a member of Congress. It's not a violation of the rule. And just as you have been expressing bias through your members about what a hero
There is not
is,
a single person on this
and
committee
lied.
who has ever characterized a witness
Gentleman
as
from
lying.
Rhode Island,
Gentlemen,
it's my time.
That's a disgrace.
Gentleman from Rhode Island will
Praise
suspend.
him. No, the disgrace
Mr.
is what this man has done.
The
to
gentleman
our
from
justice
Texas will
system.
suspend for a
There
moment.
is the disgrace. And it won't be recaptured anytime soon because of the damage you've done to the justice system. And I've talked to FBI agents around the country. You've embarrassed them. You've embarrassed yourself. And I can't help but wonder when I see you looking there with a little smirk, how many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
Credibility of a witness
Shame
is
on
always
you,
an
Mr.
issue.
Gohmert.
Mr.
And you
Chairman, please, there's
Have you
Mr.
know,
Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the
What is
witness.
wrong with that? You need your medication.
These are the people that make decisions for us.
So Strzok was having an affair with
Lisa Page,
the other FBI agent, and they were exchanging these texts. That's where these texts come from. And so Gohmert brought his affair into it and talked about how he lied to his wife. But to be fair to Gohmert, he has been livid about the dozens of affairs that Donald Trump has had, including paying off Stormy Daniels, a porn star, very recently, and doing campaign finance violations while having unprotected sex with an adult film star, and also the one with Karen McDougal and possibly Sarah Bouchard and the abortion that she got. But Gohmert was out, I'm just getting in now. There's no IFP, but still, Gohmert's never been outraged by any of that, never cared. Bravo, Trump, way to cheat on your wife, way to lie to her, way to lie to everyone else, way to lie to the whole country. But now that I got a guy who sent a couple of texts that I don't like, I am shocked and chagrined that you have political opinion. They all have political opinions. The question is, does it affect their work?
Let's see more.
Well, then why wouldn't you wait until the investigation was over before you have her the nominee and winning a general election against an opponent that hadn't even been named yet? 100 million to 0, Agent Strzok? That's how bad she should win?
Mr. Gowdy, those personal expressions of my observing the political process of the presidential primaries had no bearing on my actions of any investigation, to include the investigation of Secretary Clinton.
You couldn't think of
or anybody else. Sir,
you couldn't think of a single person that would not vote for Hillary Clinton for president? 100 million to 0, Agent Strzok?
Sir, that was clearly hyperbole, which I...
Well, let's say it was hyperbole. Let's divide it by 10. How about we say it was hyperbolic and divide it by 10? 100 million divided by 10, I'm pretty sure is 10 million. 0 divided by 10 is still 0. You couldn't think of a single solitary person that was going to vote for her for president before you interviewed her and while you were supposed to be investigating her.
Congressman, clearly that's not the truth. Clearly I could envision millions of Americans who are likely and did vote for then candidate.
Well, you wrote it.
My point, sir.
Did you write it? Did you write that?
I did write that, sir.
Okay. Were you under duress?
Political expression engaging in hyperbole.
Look at how disingenuous that is. Does anyone really believe that Strzok thought literally it'll be 100 million to 0?
No, I think it was literal.
What, did you write it? Did you write it? Did you write it? Yeah, he wrote it as a joke. Come on. If you're a Republican or a right winger, you think that he meant that it'll literally be 100 million to 0? Why is Gowdy wasting time on this? And Gowdy's supposed to be one of the ones that are like, sometimes tweet Trump, and then people get all mad. No, when it comes to the cameras are on, they're all trying to desperately give their bananas to Trump. Oh, Mr. Trump, I helped you. Do you like me now? Gowdy did how many investigations of Obama? And how many investigations of Hillary Clinton when the Republicans were in charge of Congress and Obama was president? And in all of them, Oops, turns out there's nothing that they did wrong, but I'll launch another one. I think they did 9 in Benghazi. Every single one concluded, even led by Republicans, that there was no law breaking, nothing wrong, etc. But let's do another one because I want to be on camera and I want my base to know I'm as stupid as they are. 100 million to 0, you wrote it, I am outraged.
Do you have any idea how many Republican members of Congress have personally invested hundreds of thousands of their own dollars into private prison companies and then turn around and support laws that criminalize nonviolent behavior of Americans throughout the country so they can be arrested, prosecuted, and imprisoned in these private prisons so they can make some money? I would argue that that type of conflict of interest is more of a bias that really influences the decision making that they do while they're supposed to be representing the American people. There's no hearings on that. No. But we're having hearings on an FBI agent who's not part of the Mueller investigation at all. He's not part of the Mueller investigation.
And having conversations and hearings about his text where he was joking. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, you got him. Are you going to investigate, to Anna's point, your own colleagues and say, isn't it a little biased of you to be ruling on criminal justice when you make money every time the stock price goes up for private prisons? No hearings on that. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.